Hi friends, I'm teacher Luke and welcome to this interactive listening mini course. This course is all about the interactive listening and summary question type. The one where you have to participate in a conversation by listening and selecting the correct answers out of the multiple choice questions. And once the listening part of this question is done, you then need to write a short summary about the conversation. For this, you only have 75 seconds, which is not long at all. So learning about some strategies and structures you can use will be really helpful. And that's why I've made this mini course. This mini course has 3 lessons. Lesson 1 is all about the interactive listening part of the question type, where I talk about the key points and give you some listening strategies. Lesson 2 is all about the summary, where I share a structure you can use to write your summary. And lesson 3 is just practice questions, where you can practice a bunch of practice questions, both for the listening and summary parts. And of course, you can check your answers as well. Okay then, I really hope this course is helpful, and let's get started with lesson 1. Hi friends, so there's a new question type on the Duolingo English test and it's called interactive listening. On the test, it looks like this. Since this is a new question type, I'm sure you have lots of questions about it. So in this video, I'm going to teach you about the key points and give you some really good strategies to do well on this question. And at the end, I've got some practice questions for you. But very quickly, before we start that, if you're new to this channel, hi, I'm teacher Luke from DETready.com, and we're here to help you prepare for the Duolingo English test. So if you're looking for some tools to help you prepare, that's a great website to go to. Let's jump right into this new listening question. First, I'll go over some key points to help you understand what it's all about. For this question type, you have to participate in an academic conversation. The key word here is participate. So as you go through this question type, you are one of the people in the conversation. I believe this makes this question very engaging and much more realistic than the other listening questions that are on like the IELTS or TOEFL, where you just listen as a passive listener. In this question type, you are active and you are participating in the conversation. And your job is to listen and select the correct answers. As you can see here, there will be 5 multiple choice options and you choose the correct answer. And in total, you'll answer between 5 and 6 questions. And you get 4 minutes to complete them. So basically on the exam, it looks like this. And as you go through the conversation, you're listening to a person and then answering multiple choice questions based on the conversation. And another key thing you need to know is that you can only listen once to each part of the conversation, because once you've moved on to the next part, the listening actually appears as text. So you only get to listen once, which does make this question kind of difficult. But the text appearing like this is a really good thing because you can refer back to the text, which can help you to answer the following questions. So there are some positives and negatives. Next up, the listening part of this question type contributes to your comprehension and conversation scores. And after the conversation, you have to write a short summary. After you've finished the listening questions, you can reread the conversation and then click next to go on to the summary, just like this. I will discuss this summary with some strategies in my next video. But for this one, we're going to focus just on the listening part of this question type. So as this question type is a bit complex, let's take a look at a process you can use to answer it effectively. And the first thing you want to do is to always take your time and read about the situation carefully. This is really important because it provides the first context of the conversation. And you'll use this context throughout to understand the listening and to choose the correct multiple choice answers. The very first thing you have to do is pick an option to begin the conversation. I think that most conversations will start like this, where you actually start the conversation by choosing the correct answer rather than listening first, just like in this example here. So you pick the best option to start the conversation, and then you listen to the other person. The other person could be a friend or a professor. Then you go through the whole conversation, listening and selecting the most appropriate responses. You'll have to do this between 5 and 6 times. And as you're going through, the listening file turns into text and you can see the correct answers. And this is very important because after you've completed the conversation, you don't want to click next right away. You want to go through and read the conversation again thoroughly. This is so important. Make sure you don't click next right away. Instead, you do read the whole conversation, because once you've clicked next, you go on to the summary and you can't go back. It's vital that you read the whole conversation. That's a basic process of this question type from start to finish. You do have 4 minutes to complete it, so take your time and use the whole 4 minutes. Even if you finish the listening questions early, go through and take your time and read the conversation. Okay, so that's the process. Now let's take a look at some strategies you can use to make sure you answer all of the questions correctly. I already mentioned this, but I will say it again. Make sure you read the situation carefully and understand the context. By understanding the context clearly, you'll be able to eliminate the wrong options as you go through the conversation. It'll make your life a lot easier. A good way to understand context is to identify keywords in the scenario. For example, let's look at this one here. You're a student in a journalism class. After today's lecture on reporting, you approach your professor to ask them more about what it means to cultivate sources. What would be some of the keywords here to help you understand this context? For me, the keywords are reporting and cultivating sources. You can use those keywords, reporting and cultivating sources, to help you to identify the correct answers throughout the conversation. They will likely come up, or synonyms of these words will likely appear throughout the conversation. The next strategy is to pay attention to the relationship between the speakers. Is it between a student and a student, or a student and a professor? This is very important because the way you speak to your friend or your professor is very different. With a friend, it's going to be very casual, and with a professor, it will likely be quite formal. So for example, again, in this one here, you are talking to your professor. So if you are provided with very informal options in the multiple choice questions, you can eliminate them because you will not speak informally to your professor. My next tip is to identify distractors and eliminate them from your options. Distractors are incorrect options in the multiple choice that are designed to distract you. Distractors could include unrelated topics, exaggerated statements, or answers that seem plausible but don't fit the context of the conversation. As you go through the conversation, try to eliminate all the distractors first so you can just focus on the most relevant options. That will save you some time and make your life a lot easier. Tip 4 is to look out for synonyms. When it comes to listening questions on any test, the Duolingo, IELTS or TOEFL, synonyms always play a very important role. It's not often that you'll hear the exact words repeated throughout the conversation. Instead, you'll listen to synonyms and they'll help you to choose the correct answer. A really good example of this is actually in the very first question of the example conversation we've been looking at here. So the scenario says, you're a student in a journalism class. And the very first option here, we have, "Hi Professor, I had a question about something you mentioned in today's lecture." Of course, class and lecture are synonymous. So Duolingo here did not use a repeated word. Instead, they used a synonym to test your understanding. This is very common in all types of listening tests, IELTS, TOEFL, and the DET. That was quite an easy example, but there is actually a more difficult example in this conversation. Let me show you. In the next example, we had the synonyms developing relationships and networking. That's a much more difficult example to notice, but it does show you how synonyms will be used throughout the listening questions. So you have to pay attention and watch out for synonyms. My next tip is to read the previous responses in the conversation. As I mentioned, the text does appear as the conversation is going through. So if you are stuck, I highly recommend that you read the previous responses because there might be some clues in the previous responses. So if you're not sure, make sure you go back into the conversation and read all the text, looking for some clues. And my last tip is quite an obvious one, but it is to make sure you answer all the questions and guess if you need to. Even if you're not sure, please take a guess because you could get lucky and choose the right answer. Even if you're wrong, the answers do appear so you can read them and get ready for your summary. Okay, so those were some strategies for you. Now let's do a practice question. I've prepared one practice question for you with the correct time limit, so give it a go and let me know if you found it easy or difficult below in the comments. I will also ask you to write a summary here, but I haven't taught you about that because I will teach you in my next video. And if you want to practice in a more interactive way, head over to detready.com because we've got over 300 questions ready for you to practice. You can go through them just like on the real exam, and you can check your answers immediately. We have 300 interactive listening questions and we're adding more each week, so that's at detready.com. But anyway, let's do a practice question now. Let me know if you found it easy or difficult below in the comments.
That sounds like a great idea. What do you think the main focus of our study group should be? Those are excellent aspects to focus on. We could also work on developing our arguments and incorporating evidence more effectively. We could start each meeting by discussing specific writing challenges we're facing, then work together on exercises and share feedback on each other's writing. You're welcome. I'm looking forward to our study group meetings. Don't hesitate to reach out if you need any help with planning or preparation.
So how was that? Was that easy or difficult? Write below in the comments. And also, if you're watching this part of the video, put a heart emoji to let me know you've watched it all the way to the end. And now I recommend you watch this speaking video next because it will help you to describe a photo really, really well, which is hard. So I'll see you in this video and thanks for watching. Bye. Hi friends, Teacher Luke here. So there is actually a new writing question on the Duolingo English test. It's called Summarize the Conversation, and it comes right after the interactive listening. It looks like this on the test. First, you do the listening part where you participate in an academic conversation. You then do the summary, where you summarize in writing everything you listened to and did in the academic conversation. And that's what this video is about. Here, I'm going to teach you all about the key points and give you lots of strategies to do well on the summary part of the interactive listening question. A lot of students have asked me to make this video, so I really hope it's helpful. But very quickly, before we start, if you're new to this channel, hi, I'm Teacher Luke from DETready.com. If you're looking for some tools to help you prepare for the Duolingo English test, I recommend visiting our website, especially our practice platform, where you can practice this new interactive listening and summary question, and you can check your answers immediately. And of course, we have lots of practice questions for all of the question types on the Duolingo test. But anyway, back to this video. Let's start off by talking about the key points of this summary question. So as I mentioned, it does appear immediately after the interactive listening. And your job is to write a short summary of the conversation in just 75 seconds. So I'm sure you're thinking, 75 seconds, how can I write a summary in that short amount of time? Well, don't worry, I have some strategies I'll show you later on. After the listening is done, you are able to read the conversation before you begin writing. Now that's really important. So after you've done the interactive listening, like you can see on the screen now, you are able, if you have time left, to go back to the start of the conversation and read it through. And I highly recommend you do that because that will give you lots and lots of ideas for your summary. And of course, it will remind you of what was said during the conversation. But remember, you can't take notes. One of the main rules on the Duolingo English test is that you are not allowed to use a pen and paper, so you can't take any notes. That does make it harder, but Duolingo are very concerned about test security and making sure no one can cheat, so you're not allowed to use any pen or paper during the test. This summary contributes to your literacy and production subscores, and the summary is scored based on the production subscore criteria. A lot of test takers I speak to find it really hard to get a high score in production, so this is another question type you can use to boost your production score. And it will be scored in the same way as the other writing questions using the production score criteria you can see here. The first 2 points are concerned with grammar. The following 2 are all to do with your vocabulary. The next point is all to do how well you answered the question. This is called task relevance. And the last one is concerned with how much you're able to write in a short amount of time, also known as fluency. So that's the scoring criteria. It's the same for all the other writing questions on this exam as well. Now let's think about some different strategies you can use to answer the summary as well as you can. The first one is really important, and that is before you finish the listening part of this question type, you should read the whole conversation and the situation carefully. So once again, once you've finished the listening part, it looks like this, and you can read the conversation through fully. But I want to stress that you don't just want to read the conversation, you want to really focus on the situation. Because you can easily write your first and even maybe your second sentence just based on the situation provided. Actually, that's exactly what Duolingo do in their sample answer. Let me show you what I mean. So the situation says, you are a student in a journalism class. After today's lecture on reporting, you approach your professor to ask them more about what it means to cultivate sources. Then if you skip through this all the way to the end where Duolingo provide a sample summary, you can see here that the first 2 sentences are basically paraphrasing the situation. I asked my professor a question after class today. I asked them to explain the concept of cultivating sources as a reporter. So the first two sentences in this example was basically a paraphrase of the situation. To paraphrase, you typically just keep the ideas exactly the same, but you change the sentence structure and maybe the verb choice or nouns in the sentences. And that's why I'm saying it's very important that you read the situation carefully, because this will likely be the first and maybe even the second sentence in your summary. So that's my first tip. My second tip is also very important, which is to study opening phrases before you begin your summary. As you know already, you only have 75 seconds to complete this task. That's obviously not long at all. So by studying opening phrases, you'll know how to begin, and that will save you valuable seconds. So what are some opening phrases? Well, let me show you here. So here are 8 opening phrases you can use. Of course, you need to be careful and select the right one depending on the conversation you listen to, but a lot of these can be used for any situation. Again, let's take a look at the sample answer from Duolingo. The opening phrase Duolingo used was, "I asked my professor a question after class today." So I strongly suggest that you study these opening phrases and that you practice typing them quickly. Like I said, that will save you valuable seconds on the test. On top of that, you'll know exactly how to begin, and a lot of students struggle with actually getting started on these writing questions. So don't let that be you and learn these opening statements. Remember that during the listening part of this question type, you were participating in a conversation, so you were acting as if you were one of the people talking. So when you do the summary, use the word I, and I recommend you use the active voice because that's a lot easier and a lot more natural when you're talking about yourself. Just as in the Duolingo sample, I asked my professor a question after class today. Okay, next up, you want to write paragraphs, not bullet points. Since this is an English exam, this one should be obvious, but just to clarify, you want to write full paragraphs and use full sentences. Don't use bullet points. Try to make your answer as complete as possible. And number 6 is to follow a simple structure. I've come up with a simple structure you can use for most of the conversations. It's not perfect because the conversations in the listening part can vary. But if you study and follow this kind of structure, then you should be able to write more in the limited time you have. Like I said, it's not a perfect, foolproof structure, but it can give you some ideas of what to write and help you to prepare. Step 1 of the structure, you could write, who did you talk to and what about? Remember the opening phrases I showed you. For example, I had a conversation with my professor about the low grade I got in my English writing class. Step 2 is to go into more detail. Think about what were the main ideas or suggestions throughout the conversation. My professor suggested that I use helpful grammar and writing resources on the university's website because these online tools can help me improve my advanced grammar and teach me how to organize my academic essays. So we've got the opening, some more detail, and the last part is all about the outcome. I believe in most of the conversations there will be an outcome. Basically, what did you say you were going to do during the conversation? For example, I agreed with my professor and said that I'd begin using these online resources right away. So that's some basic information and some strategies to do the summary well. If you haven't watched my interactive listening video yet, I recommend you do so right here because the summary and the listening are very closely linked. So I'll see you in this video. Friends, Teacher Luke here, and welcome to this Duolingo English Test practice video. This practice video is all to do with the new interactive listening question, this one here. In this video, you can practice full interactive listening conversations, plus the summaries at the end. And of course, you can check your answers as well. This question type is brand new to the test, so definitely practice with this video before you take your own DET. And we will start in just 1 second, but if you're new here, hi, I'm Teacher Luke from DETready.com, and we're here to help you pass the Duolingo English test. That's enough from me. Now let's jump right into this practice. I hope this is helpful. If you think it is helpful, write yes below in the comments. Okay, good luck with the practice.
That sounds like a great idea. What do you think the main focus of our study group should be? Those are excellent aspects to focus on. We could also work on developing our arguments and incorporating evidence more effectively. We could start each meeting by discussing specific writing challenges we're facing, then work together on exercises and share feedback on each other's writing. You're welcome. I'm looking forward to our study group meetings. Don't hesitate to reach out if you need any help with planning or preparation.
So you just finished the first practice. How was it? Was it easy or difficult? Just want to let you know that if you want to practice this question type in a more interactive way, then you can visit detready.com, because we have a practice platform with more than 300 interactive listening questions. You can go through the questions just like on the real test, and you can check your answers immediately. And of course, you can do the summary at the end as well. If that sounds good to you, there's a link below somewhere down here. Anyway, back to this practice. Now we're on to conversation number 2.
Come in. So you said you wanted to meet me about scholarships. How can I help? Sure, I can definitely help with that. Have you looked into any specific scholarships that you're interested in? Well, a good place to start would be to research scholarships that are relevant to your field of study or extracurricular activities. You can also check with your department or school to see if they have any scholarships or awards available. Yes, it's important to take your time and really think about what makes you unique and deserving of the scholarship. Make sure to highlight your achievements, both academic and extracurricular, and provide examples of your leadership skills and community involvement.
That's a common concern among students. Let's start by exploring your interests and strengths. What subjects have you enjoyed studying the most? That's great. There are many career options available that combine those interests. Networking can be a helpful tool in getting started in any field. You can also gain relevant experience through internships or volunteering. Definitely. You should aim to have a strong academic record, relevant research or work experience, and a well-written personal statement that highlights your goals and why you're a good fit for the program. You'll usually need letters of recommendation from professors, employers, or other professionals who know you well and can speak to your abilities and potential. You should think about who would be best to ask for a recommendation and make sure to give them plenty of notice to write a strong letter.
Well done, guys. You've finished 5 conversations. Was that helpful? If it was, put a heart emoji below in the comments. Now I recommend you watch this video here because it will help you with your production score, specifically with your speaking score. I think this is a really useful video, so watch it and let me know what you think. Okay, I'll see you here.